Alright guys, welcome back to F1 News. Mercedes have confirmed that James Allison will be extending his stint as their technical director for what is believed to be another 3 years until at least 2026. A massively positive move, it is believed, at least for the future of this organisation. Allison also though revealing the future of the W15, saying that last year's spiteful oversteer the car had has been dialed out for the new car. A key complaint that Lewis Hamilton made during the season, lacking confidence in the car as a result. Is that actually going to be fixed when the car gets to track in reality? Very much into your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. Plenty to dive into today. Firstly, rumours emerging that the Visa Cash App Racing Bulls might not actually be called the Visa Cash App Racing Bulls. Hopefully, this new rumour is true, but there was some talk yesterday that actually that's not going to be the name, despite the fact that there is literally a website, domain name or whatever, that Red Bull have trademarked called VisaCashAppRB.com, something like that. So we'll see what they decide to do. Hopefully, it's not this, but it still quite possibly could be as far as I'm concerned, with the way some of these naming deals have gone over the last couple of years. Also, the first words really here from Ayumu Komatsu on the future of Haas, talking about how he's definitely a different character to Günther Steiner and is not going to try and replace him one for one. He's a very different character, as you know. He has very different strengths and weaknesses to myself. I'm not trying to be someone else, and Gene knows that, and if Gene wanted Günther Steiner replacement, he would have appointed somebody else. So I understand that Gene Haas wants something different, and I will try and be the best version of myself rather than trying to be somebody else. So I think, good analysis here from Komatsu. I like his attitude. Is it going to be enough to actually deliver results for the team? That's a question. But then again, Komatsu, in many ways, a similar appointment to what McLaren have made with Andrea Stella, more technical guy leading the team forwards. And, well, the intention is to improve the quality of the car rather than some of the other things, of course, that the team principals get up to. Clearly, Haas's focus, at least apparently according to Gene Haas, is on improving the car, getting better, making more of the resources, and not finishing in 10th place. He actually confirmed, Komatsu, in his interview with Sky Sports, that he has been given like an internal target by Gene Haas on where he needs to finish, which obviously isn't 10th, whether it's 9th, 8th, I don't know, 6th. Seems a bit ambitious to me. That is as yet unknown publicly. But he actually did say on the car, it's definitely a step forward. Is it good enough? No. Now, is it good enough to win a championship? Well, obviously not. But is it good enough for what they're intending to do? Sure. They say that the car's a step forward. Obviously, everyone is going to make a step forward with next year's car. You would at least hope to some degree. And we know the Haas last year had plenty of issues. Sure, it was actually a pretty decent quali car. But in the race, they were only going backwards. And that was, well, embarrassing. Gene Haas called it. Komatsu even agreed and said, yeah, pretty embarrassing when you're on the pit wall knowing that all you're going to do is move backwards throughout the Grand Prix. So that was the primary thing to solve. He says they have improved the car, but it's not going to be good enough. So maybe that's not good enough for their targets. Who knows? The car hasn't even hit the track yet, and already there's some degree of negativity around Haas, but it's just everyone else has more resources. The only team they could possibly compete with next year is like Sauber, Stake, whatever. Like they've been struggling as well, but at least they have loads of sponsors, and Haas don't even have that going for them at the moment. So tough scenes, I think, for the Haas team, really. But lots of updates on Mercedes over the last couple of days. We saw Toto Wolff confirm himself another 3-year extension, whatever it is, or at least for the next 3 years, as their team principal, of course, potentially a similar timeline to how many years Hamilton might have left in the sport. And obviously, he's been commenting on, back in Hamilton to be the man to get the 8th title and get Mercedes back to the top. But of course, that's not achievable without a great car. James Allison, who is now again their technical director, has been giving thoughts on this the last few days and actually makes it clear again that Mercedes believe that there's so much wrong with last year's car, and still they got second in the championship, right? And I think that's one of the things giving people optimism that this season might be somewhat competitive, is that Mercedes had apparently so much wrong, and yet they were still pretty competitive. Sure, they never really took a proper challenge to Red Bull at any point of the season, apart from, of course, Singapore, even the US Grand Prix, where they got close. Hamilton was nearly on Verstappen's heels in the sprints, then he pulled away, and then the Grand Prix as well. There was a chance there. Of course, the car was eventually illegal anyway with the right height stuff, but James Allison said, namely, everything was wrong with the car from front to back. We had to do something about that, and it took longer than we wanted. The whole car needs to be improved, but in addition to this, James Allison has now confirmed he will stay, and Mercedes have confirmed, on a long-term contract extension as their technical director. It's been quite a whirlwind over the last few years. Allison, of course, he was a Ferrari man previously. He came to Mercedes several years ago, worked on some legendary Mercedes cars as their technical director, such as, of course, the W11 back in 2020. Then, kind of after those regulations settled down, he stepped away away. Mike Elliott took up the role of being the technical director for the team and, well, oversaw, shall we say, the sidepod concept, if you want to call it a concept, in 22. And really, I think what ended Elliott's career in that role was the transition to 23, when that same concept remains, and it was massively problematic. And the rumor is that Toto Wolff called up James Allison to bring him back from, he became the CTO, but he went off to do stuff in boats with like Ineos and all this stuff. He wanted to step away from F1 for a couple of years, and I get it, right? I mean, it was it's hard graft working in Formula 1, and when you've won so many championships in a row, maybe you don't quite have the same drive that you previously did. But the idea that you've got to try and get back to the top, that's a fight that Allison seems willing to take up. And Toto got on the phone at Bahrain testing and said, yeah, this car ain't it, James. You've got to come back and lead the show. And then it wasn't that long after that Mike Elliott was, effectively fired from that role. James Allison came back in as the technical director. Mike Elliott then became the CTO, so I think they kind of swapped roles. So on paper, that was a promotion for Elliott, but the reality was that he was going to be gone. And then in October, he left the team, or was forced out of the team, or whatever you want to say. And there's even now rumours that potentially he might go to Alpine, and maybe Mick Schumacher might come along. But that was rumours back in November that I thought I'd just mention if you guys hadn't heard it. But James Allison is the man as far as Mercedes are concerned. And to be honest, Allison, not only is he a great technical visionary in terms of bringing development to the car, sure, is he as gifted as Newey? Possibly not, but he also does have other parts to his arsenal, and that's what Toto Wolff is getting across here in terms of being a technical leader, not just like an engineer, but also in terms of how he can motivate a team. I think that's one of the really valuable things about Allison that Mike Elliott didn't really have. If Mike Elliott is, the head of your technical team, is he going to inspire the same, gladiatorial spirit, as Toto Wolff describes it as James Allison does? Like, sure, Allison might not be the engineer that Newey is. I don't think anybody in like the history of the world has been the engineer that Newey is in many respects, but Allison does have plenty of other, feathers in his cap, whatever you want to say. So as Toto Wolff says, put simply, he is the most impressive technical leader in our sport. His gladiator spirit, along with his knowledge, experience, and determination, makes him second to none. So it's not just, it's not like he designs the car necessarily. He designs part of the car. He oversees some of the ideas in the car design, but also puts into practice an effective team behind the scenes. So I think definitely for Mercedes, keeping him on for what seems to be at least a 3-year deal. I'm not sure Mercedes confirmed officially how long this deal is going to be, but there's rumours that, 2-3-year extension, something like that, just to take him up to a similar time frame as Toto Wolff, when he will oversee 24, 25, and of course, the transition to 26, which is the all-important thing that Allison will be overlooking over the next couple of years. But definitely think massively positive news for Mercedes. Also, I guess you got to wonder, does this mean anything for how their project is currently going? Is this, some people will look at this positively and negatively. They'll say, well, are they only signing him long term because this current project isn't going so well? He needs more time, and really the focus is on 26. Or is this kind of a sign that, Allison and his team have made big progress with the W15, so a no-brainer to, he's not washed, basically, right? He's definitely still the man for the job, and get him on a long-term deal. I'm kind of more inclined to believe that it's a positive. I don't think it can really be seen as a negative, this for Mercedes. But does it have any weight on the W15? That is certainly a question, and it's one that Mercedes will be keen to answer, because of all the teams so far in this kind of winter break period, the team that's been talking the most, they've been really gassing up their car, is probably McLaren. They've been speaking a lot about the development they're making, the lack of diminishing returns they are finding. Red Bull are also doing a bit of it, to be fair, I think understandably so. Ferrari, kind of contrary to usual proceedings, haven't been too much crazy optimism about Ferrari. Like, there's been no articles that have said that Ferrari have gained another 1,000 horsepower. So, maybe, I don't know, we'll see how Ferrari are this season. I'm somewhat concerned, actually, about Ferrari's competitiveness next season as it stands. Just, rumours, though. We can't read too much into it. But Mercedes have also been quite gung-ho in their analysis as well. Toto Wolff actually said the other day, the regulations a few years ago, we interpreted them in a very conservative way. We have seen other teams doing it differently, so watch this space. I think it's going to be very different in 2024. Not just the car, but also presumably the results, which is the key thing that Mercedes will want to improve. But James Allison, kind of as a part of this announcement, also gave some comments to the media on the development of the W15 and kind of what they've tried to fix with the car. Mainly the spiteful rear end. If you guys watched any onboards of last year's W14, it seemed like at least a nightmare to drive from the rear end. There was a few laps I watched back in, it was Zandvoort, when Hamilton and Russell, both of them, coming out of that kind of slow left-hander that goes down towards the end of sector 2 and towards the end of the lap, they could not control the rear of the car. It was all over the place. And Brazil was probably the worst example when the rear end was so unstable that, it was cooking the tyres, and that was the thing that the W13 had going for it, was good tyre wear. The W14 didn't really, because the rear tyres were getting cooked on circuits where they were overly struggling. So this is what James Allison says. Going into the new year, obviously lots of questions either way. However, what we do have some hope for is that some of the more spiteful characteristics of the rear end of our car will be a bit more friendly to us, and the handling of the car will be a happier thing. So Allison is generally a little bit more conservative in his predictions and analysis than even Toto Wolff tends to be, or other teams are. He will generally be a little bit more like, well, we think we've improved this, we think we've improved that, but he's not necessarily going to say outright, it's solved. But, there's still some level of optimism here. That's all in simulation, but nevertheless, we've got reasonable grounds to believe that we've made some gain there. I did want to share the rest of this, though, because I thought it was all rather interesting. On top of the handling, you've got the normal housekeeping type stuff, making it lighter, making it more downforcey, hopefully getting a bit of uplift on the power unit side with the calibration levels tinkering they're still capable of doing. So yeah, rumour has it that Mercedes power units are taking some step forward the new season, which could be a benefit to Mercedes and of course to the other Mercedes power teams, such as McLaren, that will probably be the most competitive Mercedes power car that isn't a Mercedes, or maybe the most competitive. That's certainly plausible as well. Whether it's enough, time will tell, but it's nevertheless going to be interesting because we saw some things we knew were problems. We have hypothesized what the reason for those problems were. We have fixed those reasons. It will be interesting to find out how accurate we have been with that diagnosis. This, though, I thought was kind of telling, maybe not telling exactly, but I thought worth noting, just because McLaren said the other day they're not really seeing diminishing returns. They believe they can keep developing their car further and further, and it just gets better and better and better. Now, there will be some degree of development ceiling with these cars, you would think, and probably Red Bull must be getting somewhat near it. We thought that might have been the case last year, but apparently not necessarily. McLaren are saying they're still seeing big gains. But, is that actually good or bad for McLaren? Do you want to be seeing some diminishing returns? Because that means you're close to the absolute maximum performance. If you're not yet seeing diminishing returns, then maybe your car just isn't quick enough. I don't know. What do you guys think about that in the comments? But this is what James Allison says. We hope we've done a good job with the new car. We've addressed the shortcomings. There's also a little bit that nettles in the back of your heads, which is that the rules themselves have a much more clear upper bound to them in the amount of lap time these cars are capable of producing. It's a much clearer upper bound to them than in the older generation, i.e. 2021 and previously, which the more love you gave them, the more labour you put into them, the faster they got, seemingly without ends. I think if you look at last year, you'll see from the start of the season to the end, Red Bull's dominance was near complete. If you look at the bigger picture, this is a grid that is gradually compressing. So his feeling is that this set of regulations has an optimal way to do it, and therefore a quite clearly defined upper ceiling with what is possible in this set of regulations. His feeling was in 2021 and previously, maybe in part because they just had so much money to throw at the problem, pre-budget cap, but back then, he felt like you could just keep adding more and more performance and you'd get away with it. These cars, maybe just the way they're designed, ground effect and having to run at certain ride heights, there isn't an infinite amount of performance you can gain. And this also implies that Mercedes are seeing diminishing returns, right? I mean, he's talking about finding an upper bound and feeling like, well, there's only so much you can do, which implies that Mercedes have, made big progress, but they feel like there isn't that much more to do, which could be positive or negative, depending on which way you look at it. So tweet your thoughts on that in the comment section below. But this is, the idea of this spiteful rear ends, probably a big thing for especially Hamilton. Russell also didn't like it, obviously, but it was a big thing that Hamilton talked about during the season, that dealing with the W14 was like trying to balance a knife on its edge. It's never perfectly balanced. Either you get oversteer or massive understeer. We try and get it in the middle. This was Japan, where they got it pretty well set up and he had a good qualifying performance, but lots of times during the year, especially Brazil really, when there was so much oversteer in the car, it was an absolute nightmare to deal with. So they, and whether that was suspension, whether that was floor design, whether it was whatever, it was a big problem, probably induced in part by the fact that they had the zero pods, they got rid of them, they put the other side pods on the car, and the car just wasn't well balanced and Frankenstein, whatever you want to say. He says, Allison, that's solved this year, and sure, that might increase performance, as it will, but also it's going to increase confidence, right? It was one of the things that Hamilton mentioned and the team mentioned, that going into Austin, they brought a floor upgrade that they thought was worth 1/10 of a second, but Hamilton felt like it gave him 1/10 in performance, but it gave him at least 1 or 2 more tenths in confidence, which of course is especially critical in qualifying conditions. So I think there's some positives to take here. Obviously the question is, will it be good enough? Because Adrian Newey has also extended his deal. This is confirmed, not really confirmed, I'm not exactly sure, sure, but there was rumours back in May that Newey is not leaving Red Bull anytime soon, and, you know, they're obviously going to be very strong in the new season. So Allison is going to have to cook up something particularly special to challenge them and take them down, but, you know, Toto Wolff has said that they relish the challenge of trying to do so as quickly as 2024, if not 2025, and certainly with the intention in 2026, when the new power units come into play, when you would, you know, if you had to predict who's going to have the stronger power unit between Red Bull powertrains and Mercedes, you know, Mercedes have the experience, they have the track record, Red Bull powertrains don't, but Ford actually, who are partnering with Red Bull, say that we are going first class ticket to the very top of the podium. So, you know, whether you think that's overconfidence or just confidence in the direction of their power unit plans, but it's still very much early days on this one. So very much interested your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.